Oh, there we go again. Just as the DA was winning the expats case, just as the DA had won the massive VAT victory, Dean McPherson, the minister in charge of implementing the Expropriation Act, and who is in a corner because he needs to do certain things as a minister while remaining a DA party member, decided to not just sort of play both, but to get a bat and swing completely for the ANC and the Marxists on the Expropriation Act. And not just play middle ground, but he went all in like he's been smoking some blue lights chemical of some kind. All right, in this video, I'm going to show you how Dean McPherson has put the DA in a very strange position. And then in my biblical reaction, I'm going to give you something about the Expropriation Act that should blow your mind. Let's start here. Do you remember when President Ramaphosa went on his own and signed this?
And for our last story, we are shifting focus to South Africa, where troubles are growing for President Cyril Ramaphosa. His own coalition partners have declared a dispute with the government after the president signed some controversial bills into law. Ramaphosa has approved the controversial Expropriation Bill. It is a land reform bill that is strongly opposed by the Democratic Alliance, or the DA, the second largest party in Ramaphosa's government of national unity. Now, the law allows the government to seize land without having to pay compensation. It replaces the pre-democratic Expropriation Act of 1975 and outlines how expropriation can be done and on what basis by the state. It can benefit the country's majority black citizens who own just a small fraction of farmland, more than 30 years after the end of apartheid. Most landowners are a part of the white minority, and those advocating for the white minority rights, like the DA, a pro-business opposition party, are opposing the bill. The party has in fact declared a dispute and has called for an overhaul of relations within the government of national unity. It has criticized Ramaphosa's African National Congress Party, or the ANC, for failing to adhere to the procedures set out in a coalition deal agreed last year.
She says, this act may help the black majority who don't have access to land. This is from my book, a forthcoming book. This was in 2019. Do you remember what all the constitutional court's judges say? Because someone had sued the Department of Land Reform on all the laws we had before the Expropriation Act, the comrades didn't give them the land. They took them all the way up to Constitutional Court. In 2019, the Department of Land Reform has shown unresponsiveness plus a refusal to account to those dependent on its cooperation for the realization of their land claims. And despite repeated promises, plans, and undertakings, it has displayed incapacity to get the job done. South Africans have been waiting for more than 25 years for equitable land reform. It is not the Constitution. No problem with the Constitution. It is not the courts. No problem with the courts in 2019. It is not the laws of the country that are at fault in this. So the black applicants, it was not the laws that were present before 2019 that stopped it. What was the problem? It is the department's incapacity to do what the laws that were present at the time required, that causes the mess of the land that has been available not to get there. And of course, some Marxists will come on this channel and say, yeah, but judges, blah, blah, blah. Well, let's go to a comrade. Comrade Kgalema Motlanthe in 2017 said this. The evidence that they had examined showed that land reform has severe problems. What are the problems? The laws are racist. No. People at the hearings expressed their sense of having been betrayed by government officials and politicians. Many people and groups who submitted restitution claims before 1998 have still not received land, even when there are agreements that were signed. These people complained that officials were rude, unhelpful, dismissive. And they were corrupt. They stole. With land going to the wrong people rather than the ones on the forms. The problem of stealing has been confirmed even by the SIU, that senior officials in the Department of Land Reform have been stealing the land. And if it's 2017, I will tell you, senior officials are majority black. Black people have been stealing land from black people since they filled the forms in 1998. People complained that they are currently more vulnerable to dispossession than they were in 1994. So they're saying our land situation is worse now under ANC stealing than 1994, before the ANC came into power. The problem is especially in areas where mining takes place. We need our minerals so that comrades can steal more. They say when the land has minerals under it, the stealing was highest. Who said this? Comrade Kgalema Motlanthe, after studying the situation over 25 years. Mining deals that will enrich a select few while excluding the people it should have gone to. This is all before expropriation. The current policy also is that they would not give them the title deed if they got the land. They would just rent it to them. So since the program of 1995 that Comrade Kgalema is complaining about, that judges were complaining about, only 5% was redistributed. So that journalist was telling the truth, and Kgalema Motlanthe and his panel are lying, and all judges of the Constitutional Court are lying. Or all courts of the Constitutional Court and Kgalema Motlanthe and his panel are telling the truth, and that journalist was spewing lies that have been destroying this country. This is what Minister McPherson said just after signing of the Expropriation Act.
Works Minister Dean McPherson expressed deep concerns about the impact of current legislation on South Africa's vital partnerships, particularly in relation to funding for HIV/AIDS initiative.
I really think that the act has become a distraction, quite frankly, from the real work that we need to do. I think it's put us in the crosshairs of our partners, which I think is also not where we want to be. We want to build sustainable partnerships around the world, including with the United States. They are not our adversary. They are a partner, and they've been a long-standing partner. And we've got to get that right, Heidi, because South Africa cannot afford to lose 17% of its funding for HIV/AIDS treatment. That would be devastating and cost people their lives. And many of the decisions that are taken have real life consequences. And so my goal is to ensure that all of the legislation that falls within my department and that I have influence of, over at least, is able to drive investment, drive job creation, and drive growth. Because that is the number one obsession in the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure. How do we create jobs? We see ourselves as an economic delivery unit. We see ourselves as a catalyst for growth in South Africa. And that's exactly what my daily work will be. And where there are policies and legislation that obviously needs discussions around whether they are contributing or maybe detracting from it, we'll have those conversations, Heidi, but we're going to do them responsibly. We're going to do them collectively, and we're going to do them where they drive the best interests of South Africa.
Awesome. Beautiful. He spoke like a minister. He spoke like a minister who didn't attack government. He doesn't attack his boss, but he doesn't turn his back on his beliefs from his party. Now, today, all of a Sunday, he starts making excuses for the act.
I think that there's no doubt that when you read Section 8 and 19, they are contradictory. I mean that's it's obvious, and you can't have two procedures to deal with one principle. So, but the point is this: is that in my view, as the minister, that is resolvable. And what we are seeking to do is to find an appropriate way forward that satisfies issues that people may have with the Act. Because I want to state this up front, Kgalema. If the Act was to be, in my view, struck down in its entirety, and we go back to 1975, I don't know what's going to come after that. And in politics, sometimes you must be careful what you wish for, because often you can get it. And so, what comes after that is open to a new parliament that has very different dynamics, and that has parties that have very different internal dynamics. So my view as the minister is, yes, I recognize that there is a contradiction in Section 8 and 19, but I think that it is resolvable, and my job as the minister, A, is to try and provide resolutions to the concerns that parties have, and then B, to make sure that we have a regulatory framework that works parallel to the Act to ensure that any other issues around any other further definitions or processes is clearly spelled out, which we plan to do in a very consultative manner that includes agricultural experts, land reform experts, all types of experts, so that everyone is then very clear and happy on those regulations. But my bottom line as the minister is, let's try and deal with contradictions, let's try and deal with those issues, and let's safeguard what, by and large, in my view, is an act that provides those definitions and those clarities that are needed, that are above 1975 and above US federal law, and then move forward in a constructive way.
Sure, reasonable. He's the minister. But now here's what then happened. In that same event, he went on to say some things, and it's shocking. The first one is in the headline. So, Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure has defended SA's new Expropriation Act, saying it's an improvement on the 1975. Speaking during a panel discussion at NAMPO Festival in Bothaville, he said the word compensation had been weaponized by politicians. Weaponized by politicians? Okay. His party, the DA, is currently challenging the act in court. Now, he says the new legislation seeks to standardize the procedure in which expropriation occurs, which was better than 1975, that didn't offer clarity. And he added that the legislation also contains greater safeguards and clarity than the federal law of the US, which has its own form of expropriation legislation called eminent domain. Okay, this is an ANC talking point. To say, no, every country has it. Even the Americans have it. It's called eminent domain. Why, Minister McPherson? Why would you repeat that? Well, let's take a look. Let's look at this. South Africa, Economic Freedom Index. We are number 103 in the world. Mostly unfree. What's our score? 44.3. Way below halfway. It's red. It means what you guys are doing with property is horrible. It takes away people's freedom. Now, let's look at the United States. Since you said they have it too, eminent domain. They are number 26 in the world. They are mostly free. Which one do you see as the strongest point that they have? Yep, you guessed it. Property rights. As far as property rights are concerned, they are near perfect. Score is 95.4. To use the best country in the world when it comes to property rights to justify one of the worst countries in the world when it comes to property rights. I'm sorry, Minister, I will have to call you out. He says if it were to be struck down, of course, who knows, EFF and MK could come in and make something worse. Sure, that's that example that we can hear. And he says, let's try to deal with the acts, go to the little clauses. Sure. And then he goes on to talk about buildings and abandoned buildings and all of that. That's another ANC talking point. We know this is an expropriation of Property Act without compensation. No one has ever had a problem with that. No one will ever have a problem with that being done. And then there's public interest, which we know means some vague thing that a comrade can come up and bring up and say, this is in the public interest, right? Because I want your house. It's in the public interest because I need your house to do this YouTube and it informs other people in the public. So it's in the public interest. I'm taking it because I want to record in your bedroom, right? I mean, I'll probably lose the argument, but I've just raised an argument in the public interest. Nobody knows what public interest is. It depends on who makes a case at the time. And then he says, why would anyone believe that it's just and equitable to pay market value for that, despite all the costs that are owned to the government? Listen, we've been in South Africa for the last 25 years. No one was talking about abandoned buildings. They say it's for justice. They say it's for the land that was stolen from their forefathers. You know this. I don't think that's the interest of the broader community. Maybe the problem is the word expropriation. It has been weaponized by politicians. What? Now I'm going to read this. People confuse an unlawful act of expropriation without compensation as expropriation with nil compensation. Where are my panados? Nil compensation is clearly defined and they are not the same thing, said McPherson. Nil is a form of compensation. Okay, guys, now you know there's a difference between zero and nil, okay? Are you listening, children? Zero is different from nil. In response to a muttered comment from Pretoria, the minister told him, I'm talking, to which the IRR head responded, nonsense though. Yeah. I'm sorry. It's wrong to disrespect ministers, but when they start saying there's a difference between nil and zero, yeah, somebody should call that out. So he reiterated his point. Nil can be nil can be a form of compensation. That is absolutely true because I have compensated you. It's just nil. Okay. Nevertheless, Prophet McPherson said he did not foresee farms being expropriated with Neil conversation. He said he'd been involved in map blah blah and calls everyone the fearmongers. And of course he's trying to act as minister and not DA, but then there's got to be limits. You can't be singing for lunch. Someone please tell me in the comments, what do they put in these blue lights? I don't know. I think whatever they put in these blue lights comes from Swaziland. Okay, I'm utterly convinced that Neil is not an acceptable or applicable outcome of, okay, so now we must listen to you, King McPherson now. This is a law. We all concerned about a law, not about what you think and what you will do the next 5 years. No court will come to that determination because it doesn't align with the Constitution. If you ask me as an investor, this is clown stuff. Here's the thing about property rights. Any country that sees property rights as sacred and important prospers. Any country that sees property rights as subject to their feelings collapses, because the right to recognize where a property belongs is actually a godly concept. This is what we gave you, civilization. It's a pleasure. This has been our gift to you, civilization. That's why you have YouTube and cars and houses, because this is what we gave to you. If you look at the 10 Commandments, you'll realize that this is where the concept came into civilization further. Look at this. First commandment, I am the Lord God. Could have said that, but puts ownership, puts an attachment. He says, I am your God. Not that God is a property, but you follow. There's ownership there, and look how sacred he makes it. He says, since I am the Lord your God, you will have no other gods except me. So I'm your God, meaning the other gods are not your gods. And then he goes on to say, and if you break that, me being your God, he shows it's a 4th generation mess. But then he says, but if you keep me as your God, I'll keep the covenant to thousands of generations. And then you shall not take the name of the Lord, not just Lord God who's powerful, the Lord your God. You see how we got this value? And then he talks about the Sabbath, and then he says, honor your mother and your father. It's not just honor mothers and fathers. There's an ownership of a property there, because you say, this is my dad, this is my mom, and he says, hold that in high regard. And there's a promise there. Then you shall not murder, which means what? Recognize that life is that person's property. You can't take their life from them. You shall not commit adultery. You realize that that person, that wife belongs to that husband belongs to that wife. All right, no-go zone. You shall not steal. You realize that that property belongs to that person, and I can only get it with their permission. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You realize that that neighbor, that is their reputation. You can't steal it from them. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. Property right. Your neighbor's wife, it's a property right. His male, and I'm not calling the wife a property, but you get it. Nor his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, nor anything that is any. Now, you realize that anyone that recognizes this value prospers, because God is a God of prosperity. Even countries that may not be worshiping him, but if they live by that principle, they do well. Just take the Expropriation Act, move it to America, and have someone else sign it and say that's American law. There we go. America's over. Prosperous America's over. And then we take their property right acts and bring it here. Very soon we can sign a refugee law and they will happily come. So I end this to say, and I'll say this: people of low moral character elevate emotions above property rights. People of low moral character elevate emotions from history above the core principle of property rights. What do you think makes someone worship another god? Some emotion tells them to. What do you think makes someone commit adultery with another person's husband or wife? The emotions tell them to. Why do you think we have Expropriation Act? Because their emotions told them to. These are just people of low moral character. So, DA, I guess I'll probably see you doing something about this, Dean McPherson, going all the way to pretty much say the case against is wrong. I guess within 3 months, they probably would have fixed that. Good thing it's not Steenhuisen who was saying this. So I imagine, and it wasn't Madam Zille saying this, because I imagine that would be a point of no return. But it was Minister McPherson who has an excuse. I'm trying to walk a tightrope here and it gets difficult. But Moomish of the week. So no man can serve two masters. Either you'll love one or hate the other, or you'll respect the one and disrespect the other. You cannot serve God and Karl Marx. So let's make history together. Cheerio.